Hello and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to look at how to create functions in Python. My name is Mildred. A function is a block of code which only runs when it is called, and it is the best way to create code that we will use in multiple pages or that we will call over and over again to do multiple tasks. And so we write this kind of code in something we call a function, and what we do is call that function to execute a task every time we want a specific task to be executed. In Python, we create a function using the def keyword like this, and then we supply a name for the function. Let's say we want a function that greets people when they come to a page. After the name of the function, we put a pair of parentheses, a colon, and then recall that Python relies heavily on indentation, which means that the next line after the colon is going to be indented, and then you say print hello world or print hello and welcome, whatever you want to print in the print statement. This is a function that we say does not take anything in the parentheses. In this parentheses, if we supply an argument, let's say name, whatever we specify in the parentheses of a function definition is called a parameter. Whenever we call that function and we supply anything in the parentheses of the function call, we call that supply an argument. So they both mean the same thing in the context of that function, but it's just that they are called different names at different points. So on creation of function, whatever you add in the parentheses is a function parameter. On calling the function, whatever you add is the argument that replaces the parameter. And so we have this that doesn't have any parameter, and then when we save this, we are going to call the function using the name of the function and a pair of parentheses, and this time it's not going to be indented because we are coming out of the function definition block. So read more about indentation and syntax in Python. Refer back to previous lessons to see what we said about Python syntax and how blocks of code are indented for the scope of execution ends with the indentation of that block. And so when I save this and I run, I'll get printed out hello world to the page. If this function were to take a parameter, let's say name, and we want to print, I like using the format string. You can do it any way you want. I want to say print hello and name like this, okay? And then when I greet, I'm going to pass an argument now, which is my name like this, and say print Mildred. Now because this is not a variable, it is a string, I'll do it like this, and when I clear and run, what I will get here now is hello Mildred, how are you? So we know how to define a function that takes parameter and a function that does not take parameter. We can have more than one parameter in the function definition, and we can say we want name, age, location, and we want to say hello name, or let's send it like this. Name is 8 years old and lives in location like this. So this way, when we greet, we will supply all of the arguments in the same order. So the order matters. The first parameter for the function definition is a name, so the first argument must be the name. The parameter for the function definition is the age. The second argument has to be the age. The third parameter is the location, and so the third argument has to be the location. And when I save this, I'll clear and run. You will see that now we have John is 25 years old and lives in New York. We can use function to do something. So let's go to like a real world scenario where we have a site, and let's say for instance we want to be calculating things like grades. Let's say we want to create a function that calculates sum, right? Let's assume that there is no inbuilt function that does this. We want to calculate sum. We want sum of what? Maybe sum of two parameters that are passed in, and we'll say return a plus b. In Python, you use the return statements to return an evaluation in a function definition. So we don't have to use the print statement, because when I call the cal sum like this and I supply 1 and 2, it's going to print out 3 because I say return the evaluation of a and b. If we want to print out now, we can say print, and then we're going to print out what the return value of 1 and 2 is. So this way we can see it printed out to the screen. But in software development, you're not going to be printing out to the screen. You want to do something with the evaluation results, which is not printing at the back end. So your function definition will have return statements and not print statements when we start applying this to software development. well, except in cases where you actually explicitly want to print for testing, but most of the time return statements are what we use. And then when we call the definition, we'll ask it to return something, and then maybe at the front end, if we want to display that thing, then we're going to begin to use other methods that we can use to display that in the view. So this is an example of creating a function without parameters, with parameters, using a print statement, using a return statement. We have something we call arbitrary arguments. Now in Python, when you see things like args in the function definition, it just means like the argument. But if we do not know in advance the number of arguments that the function call will have, we'll put an asterisk in front of the parameter definition, and so we'll just say the parameter name is args. It can be any name. Let's say I want this to be a different function, so let's create a different function, and I'll say this is def, let's say for instance student, and I don't know in advance what I am going to be passing in here, but I know that I want to give it an arbitrary argument, and I'm going to use the asterisk sign and then the name of the argument, let's say number, and then I'll put a colon. And then if I want to print out in a loop, we can do that, but we're not going to look at that now. Let's say I want to print out the last entry here, so I can now say print what I want to print. Let's say f, the last entry is, and it's going to be num -1. And now when I make a function call and I say student 1 to 10 and I clear and run, I'm going to get the last entry is 10. So this is how you can use arbitrary arguments. There's a better application of this in software development. This is an illustration to show you the function of this, and when we get to part 3 and we start developing our systems, we will see how we use this and tie it up into what makes better sense. But you have to practice this and understand that these exist and these are the uses. This is how it is used. So we can use this and we don't have to use a print statement. We can return, we can loop through. Let's say what we are passing in is a list and we want to start looping through that list. We don't even have to use the arbitrary argument if it's a list. Okay, but we can decide to use it like this, and let's say for I in student, print I, and we'll run this and we'll have it printed 1 to 10 down, and we're printing out in a loop everything that is contained in the definition. If we don't want it to be like this, we don't have to do this like this, which means that what we're passing in is a list, and then we have to make sure that this is a list here. And then when I save this and I run, I'll clear, we'll have the same thing happening 1 to 10. So these are the various ways we create functions, we use functions. We can have keyword arguments, like let's say we want to define keyword arguments where the order of the arguments will no longer matter. We do something like, let's say dev student, and this time I want to specify keywords like say highest and then lowest, like this. And then I'm going to use a colon, and then I want to print out maybe the student with the highest score is highest, or want to print out highest plus lowest, or we want to return highest plus lowest. So let's use the return statement, since that is what we are actually going to be using more when we start applying this to software development. So when I call student now, I will supply this as keyword argument, highest, or let me supply lowest first. Lowest is equal to 10, highest is equal to 20. So now you see that the order will not matter anymore because it is keyword argument, so it's going to look for whether highest comes before lowest, lowest comes before highest. It doesn't matter. We are calling this function and supplying the arguments using the keywords. And so when I save this and I run, we are going to have it printed out. We said return, so it's not going to print, and if we want to print, we have to print what we have returned. So I can put a print in the function call, and then I'll have it printed as 30, because we are having the sum of the highest and the lowest. We have something we call arbitrary keyword arguments, just like the arbitrary arguments. And you know, in Python, we write arguments. Most of the time, you see arguments written like args, and you see keyword argument written keyword args like this. When we want to have an arbitrary keyword argument, we don't know in advance how many keyword arguments we're going to have. We put double asterisk and put keyword args, or you put a name for the keyword argument like that. So I'll use keyword args like that. I don't know exactly what we will have. let's assume that we're going to have maybe a list supplied to this, and we don't know how many we are going to have. We want to print this out as a dictionary, for instance. What I will do here now is to say, let's say print keyword args. Let's see how this comes out. It should come out as a dictionary. So we're printing keyword args. And so when we call this now, and I say I'm calling this students, this time what I will do is to supply a list like this. I do not know in advance what I'm going to be supplying, but I don't want to supply a dictionary. I want to just supply call students, and then I'll supply all of the arguments that I want, which is name is equal to John, age is equal to 25, city is equal to New York. The second time I call it, I don't know how many keyword arguments I'll give. I want to pass a new value. Name is equal to Bob, age is equal to 30, city is Chicago, phone number is there. I can call it a fourth time or a third time and supply something different, totally different, like this, and then it's going to give us, let's say email is equal to, let me use me@me.com, and then we close this. Now you can see that we have called this function 3 times, and in every time we call the function, what we are printing here is keyword args. Every time we call the function, we supply new set of keywords. The first one has only name, age, and city. Second has the phone added. Third has an email added. When I save this and I run, you will see that we'll have 3 sets, but everything is a dictionary using the keyword argument has the key and then the value supplied as the value. So this is where keyword arguments are very useful. You also see a lot of use of this when we start applying this to developing the back end of our site. Sometimes you have a list of arguments, but there is something you do not want to be left empty all the time. Let's say we have students and we have this called the name, we have the age, and we have the country, for instance, but we want it to get filled in country if the student leaves it blank. And so let's say country is equal to US. So this is how we provide default value for a function definition like this. So we'll put the function parameter that has a value at the end, or that has a default value at the end, like that. And then we are going to say, every time we want to print, let's say we'll print this statement. I am name, and I am age, and I am years old, and I am from whatever country. If during the function call I can say students and I want to say John 25 Canada, I can call students John and 25, and I'll say John student country equal to Canada. Anyhow I do this, when I clear here, I save and I run. Because I provided a value for this, is going to print out Canada. I provided a value using the keyword for the end. The first one I did not use any keyword, just values. Second one I just provided John and the age without a country, so that I can by default fill out US. And the third time I do this using keyword arguments. They're all going to print out completely the same, and replace US with Canada for the function calls where I supplied the argument for the country with a value of Canada. So when we have a list, like we're passing the list, we can use a for loop. We're passing a dictionary, we can loop through. We just define, give it a name. Let's say we have, for instance, I'm passing a list. We've done this previously, but let's say the students, and this is going to be a list of students. So let's say list students, and then what I want to do is that for students in list students, print out students, or return students in the case of when we apply it there, like that. And so when we have something like a student list, now you have to take this very seriously because most technical interviews you will have will always want to test you on things like this. Write a function that takes a list as a parameter, or takes a list as an argument and does X and Y and Z. And so this is where this comes in handy. So we have the student list to be John, Mary, and Steve. We want to call the function student and pass in the student list has the argument for the function call. And when I save this and I clear and I run, I'm going to have John, Mary, Steve printed out to the page. Now this is not all about functions and how we're going to use it. We're going to look at functions in an advanced form later on, but in the next lesson we're going to look at how to use lambdas in Python. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.